Be honest, how many times has this happened to you? You finally think things are changing, and then the same problem shows up again. The same type of person hurts you. The same mistake costs you. The same disappointment leaves you questioning yourself. And you sit there wondering, why does this keep happening to me? You try harder. You pray more. You promise yourself you'll do better. But somehow, life brings you back to the same lesson. What if this isn't bad luck? What if God has been trying to get your attention? You promise yourself this time will be different. Different person. Different choice. Different circumstances. You walked in more careful, more aware, more determined not to repeat the past. And yet somehow, you're here again. The same kind of disappointment. The same type of betrayal. The same heavy frustration sitting in your chest like it never left. It's exhausting. You start questioning your judgment. You wonder if you're cursed, if you attract the wrong things, if something is just broken in your story. Because how does the same pain keep finding you, even when the faces and places change? But what if it's not chasing you? What if it's revealing you? Pain that repeats itself is rarely random. When a lesson goes unlearned, life is a way of reintroducing it. Not to embarrass you, not to punish you, but to confront you. There is something inside this pattern that is asking for your attention. A belief you still carry. A boundary you still don't enforce. A wound you still haven't healed. You keep trying to change the outside, but the outside keeps reflecting the inside. That's the part that's hard to accept. Because growth means responsibility. It means looking inward instead of pointing outward. It means admitting that maybe the cycle continues not because God is against you, but because he refuses to let you settle for a version of yourself that stays stuck. Repetition is a signal. It's life saying, look deeper. It's God saying, you're ready to confront what you've been avoiding. And until you face it, until you grow beyond it, the lesson will keep returning in different disguises. The pattern doesn't break when circumstances change. It breaks when you do. Just when you start to feel settled, something shifts. You finally catch your breath. You begin to believe that maybe this time, things will stay steady. The job feels secure. The relationship feels stable. The routine feels safe. And then, without warning, it all shakes again. Plans fall apart. Conversations change. Opportunities disappear. What felt solid suddenly feels temporary. And you're tired. Tired of rebuilding. Tired of adjusting. Tired of feeling like every time you get comfortable, life pulls the ground from beneath you. It starts to feel personal. Like you're not allowed to rest. Like peace keeps getting taken from you the moment you begin to trust it. But what if the disruption isn't destruction? What if it's protection? Sometimes you try to build your future in places that were only meant to be temporary. You attach your identity to what feels stable, not realizing it's not aligned. And so the shaking comes. Not because God wants to exhaust you, but because he refuses to let you settle somewhere that will limit you. If you feel like life keeps shaking you out of your comfort zone, comment, I'm paying attention. Because comfort can be dangerous when it keeps you small. Stability can be misleading when it's rooted in the wrong foundation. What feels like chaos might actually be correction. What feels like loss might actually be movement. You see disruption as interruption, but maybe it's redirection. Every time something collapses, it forces you to detach. It forces you to rethink. It forces you to grow beyond what you thought was enough. And maybe the reason peace keeps getting interrupted is because you were never meant to stay there in the first place. Not every shaking is meant to break you. Some shakings are meant to move you. You finally got what you asked for. The opportunity, the relationship, the position, the breakthrough you stayed up at night praying about. You worked for it. You sacrificed for it. You believed that once it arrived, everything inside you would settle. But now you're here, and something still feels incomplete. You try to ignore it at first. You tell yourself to be grateful. You remind yourself how badly you once wanted this. From the outside, it looks like progress. It looks like success. But inside, there's a quiet dissatisfaction you can't fully explain. A subtle emptiness that whispers, this isn't it. And that thought scares you. Because if this isn't it, then what is? You start questioning yourself. Am I ungrateful? Am I always going to want more? Why can't I just be content? But this feeling isn't greed. It isn't arrogance. It's awareness. Sometimes God allows you to reach what you thought was a destination, so you can see it clearly, so you can feel it fully, so you can realize, without doubt, that it was never meant to complete you. If you had never reached it, you would have always wondered. You would have always believed that the missing piece was on the other side of that achievement. But now you know, and that knowing changes you. The emptiness is not failure. It's redirection. It's your spirit waking up to something deeper. It's a realization that you were chasing a level that matched who you used to be, not who you're becoming. And now that you've outgrown it internally, no external achievement can silence that restlessness. This isn't disappointment. It's clarity. You didn't come this far to stop here. And the fact that your soul refuses to settle is proof that your journey isn't over. It's expanding. You've heard that voice before. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet tension in your chest. A subtle hesitation before you say yes. A feeling that something isn't right, even when everything looks fine on the surface. It tells you to slow down, to step back, to stop explaining away what doesn't sit well in your spirit. But you ignore it because it's inconvenient, because walking away would be uncomfortable, because admitting the truth would require change. So you silence it. You call it overthinking. You convince yourself you're being too sensitive, and you move forward anyway. Then the consequences come. Not all at once, but gradually. The red flags you dismiss turn into real problems. The compromise you justify becomes regret. The situation you felt unsure about begins to unravel exactly the way your intuition warned you it would. And you're left thinking, I knew this didn't feel right. God rarely starts by shouting. He nudges. He whispers. He stays something inside you long before the external damage happens. But when you repeatedly ignore the whisper, life gets louder. What could have been avoided through obedience becomes a lesson through pain. It's not punishment. It's exposure that you're not being attacked. You're being confronted with what you tried to overlook. That inner warning wasn't there to control you. It was there to protect you, to guide you, to keep you aligned. When you keep dismissing your intuition, you're not just ignoring a feeling. You're ignoring direction. And eventually, the lesson you avoided gently will return forcefully. There comes a point where you have to stop blaming the outcome and start honoring the voice. The same inner warning will keep appearing until you respect it, until you trust it, until you finally choose courage over comfort. The whisper was never your enemy. It was your protection. It was the one thing you thought would always be there. The job that defined your security. The relationship that gave you identity. The plan that made your future feel predictable. You leaned on it. You built your routine around it. You told yourself, as long as this stays, I'll be okay. And then it was gone. Not slowly, not gently, just removed. And when it left, it felt like the ground beneath you disappeared with it. You felt exposed, vulnerable, almost stripped of who you thought you were. Because when something you depend on is taken away, it doesn't just change your circumstances, it shakes your confidence. You start asking questions you never wanted to ask. Who am I without this? What do I stand on now? Why would God allow this to happen? But sometimes what you lean on becomes what you trust more than Him. And when your stability is rooted in something temporary, it will eventually collapse. Not to destroy you, but to redirect you. To show you that your strength was never meant to come from a title, a person, or a plan. It was meant to come from something deeper. What feels like loss is often exposure. Exposure where your foundation truly was. If something was removed from your life recently and you're still trying to understand why, comment, I trust the process. Because rebuilding is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a stronger one. A foundation that doesn't depend on circumstances staying perfect. A confidence that doesn't disappear when one part of your life does. You were never meant to rely on something that could be taken from you. And sometimes, the removal is a mercy. You notice it first as a subtle tension. The jokes that once made you laugh now feel hollow. The routines that once felt easy now weigh on your shoulders. The habits you justified for years suddenly feel heavy, uncomfortable, wrong. And at first, you try to ignore it. You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You cling to what's familiar because change is hard. But the unease doesn't go away. It grows, quietly at first, then insistently. It's like a whisper in your chest saying, "This isn't right." You begin to notice it in conversations, in the way your heart reacts to people and situations. What you once accepted as normal no longer sits well inside you. You start questioning, why did I tolerate this for so long? Why did I settle here? Why did I compromise myself? This is not guilt. This is not shame. This is conviction. And conviction feels heavy because it's real. It feels disruptive because it asks for transformation. God often speaks first in whispers, subtle, uncomfortable awareness before allowing the world to demand your attention. He changes what you can tolerate, not to punish you, but to prepare you, to realign you with what is meant for your growth. Discomfort is a signal. Growth begins here, not when everything feels easy, not when life affirms your choices, but when your soul refuses to accept what it once tolerated. This is the point where change becomes inevitable. You are being invited to step beyond complacency, to confront what no longer serves you, and to realign with what truly matters. Your ease is being replaced by awareness. Your comfort is being replaced by clarity. And in that shift, you realize the moments that feel hardest are the moments that are shaping you into the person you are meant to become. Discomfort is not the enemy. It is the doorway. You reach a point where exhaustion settles deeper than fear. You're tired of repeating the same mistakes, tired of blaming others for what always seems to fall apart, tired of rebuilding the same walls, only to watch them crumble again. You've run from lessons, run from discomfort, run from the truth your soul has been whispering for years. And in that running, you felt lost, frustrated, and powerless. But then something shifts. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just a quiet, undeniable weariness that forces you to stop. And instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" The questions you once resisted now feel necessary. You start to see the patterns, the lessons hidden in the pain, the way every heartbreak, every setback, every disruption was not random, but part of a plan trying to reach you. When you stop running, clarity arrives. You realize that the walls you've been building weren't protecting you. They were hiding you from growth. The cycles you've been trapped in weren't punishments. They were invitations. God wasn't trying to hurt you. He was trying to reach you. And in that realization, your resistance begins to dissolve. You see now that every struggle, every uncomfortable truth, every repeated lesson was guiding you, not punishing you. You begin to listen instead of fight. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to trust the invisible hand that has been steering you, even when it felt like chaos. And in that moment, when you finally stop running, the pattern that once held you captive finally breaks. The weight you carried begins to lift. The cycle ends. And for the first time, you feel the freedom of walking fully aligned with the truth you've been avoiding for so long. Stopping isn't surrender. It's awakening. It's the first step toward everything you were meant to become.